Okay, so in this particular lecture, we are going to look at the models of HRM and human resource planning. So I'm going to treat two things today. The first part of the lecture will center on something that I should have done in my introductory lecture, which is about the models of HRM. So thereafter, we will also consider human resource planning. And by the end of the lecture, students are expected to be introduced to the two main models that take a center stage in the field of HRM and even management. So those of you that will be specializing in management, in the course of your readings, you'll be coming across some of these models. And they are essentially the Michigan model or the Harvard model. And another way of characterizing these models is soft HRM and hard HRM. Right after that, we'll also look at how human resource planning can be defined, the relevance or objectives of human resource planning, the process that one goes through in an attempt to develop a human resource plan. So human resource planning process. Then we will look at the techniques that can be used to embark on human resource forecasting, which include demand forecasting and supply forecasting. At this level, I'm not sure how the nature of the exams will be like. So I will use the opportunity to introduce you to some specific techniques that can be used under both demand forecasting and supply forecasting of human resources, so that if it becomes necessary, it is something that I must have treated. But if it does not drop, you will still need it as you go to level 300 and so on and so forth. Then lastly, we will consider the factors that affect human resource planning. So let's begin with the models of HRM. In the field of management and HRM, two main models have taken a center stage in an attempt to explain how human beings can be managed effectively and efficiently to achieve organizations' strategic imperatives. And these two models are what we call the Michigan model and the Harvard model. So I'm going to begin with the Michigan model because it was the initial thesis that was put forth to explain how employees can be managed to get the best out of them in an organizational setting. Thereafter, we will switch to the Harvard model or the soft HRM. So the Michigan model. Another name for the Michigan model is hard HRM model or the matching model. So for the purposes of answering objective questions, if you do not see Michigan model and you come across hard HRM model or matching model, essentially it is the same thing. Now, according to Frederick Tyler, he also characterized, because it is the first model that emerged to explain how employees can be managed in the organizational setting to get the best out of them. He captioned it as Theory X. So the Michigan model or Theory X is a classic distrust approach to the management of employees. And when we say it is a classic distrust approach to managing employees, it means that it does not grant room for employees to be trusted to do the right thing. And this demands that at any point in time, employees have to be given series of instructions, rules, regulations, and procedures to regulate their conduct in an organization. And where is this distrust coming from? It is premised on the belief that people in general and employees in particular are very much lazy, slothful, and always try to work for their selfish interests. So the basic premise or assumption of the Michigan model, the Harvard model, the Marshall model, or Theory X is that employees can never be trusted to do the right thing because intrinsically they are lazy or slothful and they always push for their selfish interests. On that accord, the model continues that the interests of the company and that of the employees are always opposing each other. So what is the interest of the employees? The employees' interest, according to this model, is that they want their salary, for instance, to be increased. They want better conditions of services. Now, that of the company or management is to achieve superior productivity, or if you like, better organizational performance. So because employees are pulling their end of the bargain, at the end of the day, it will be to the detriment of the organization. So this entrenches the distrust that management may be having for employees. So it continues that this approach says the interests of the company and employees are completely opposite, and it is the duty of management to induce change in the behavior of employees to further the company's goals. So if management of an organization wants to achieve the long-term ideals of a company in terms of its superior performance, then they have to put in place rigid measures that will regulate the conduct of employees to curtail their centering on attaining their selfish interests. So at that level, management will be able to get best out of them. Now, the etiology of these philosophies underpinning the theoretical, the Theory X or the Michigan model is that it was developed around the era where Great Britain was facing or going through the transitioning from an agrarian society to become an industrial society. And so most of the knowledgeable persons or scholars that were approached were not having management background. In fact, someone like Frederick W. Tyler was originally a trained engineer. And so when some of these people were consulted to help manage the challenges that were coming with the Industrial Revolution and the use of manned machine system to get organizations attain organizational goals, they were thinking more like how they operated machines in the engineering world. And so the theory continues that because employees are lazy or slothful and are always concerned about their selfish interests, they need to be rigidly managed like machines. And that is where it got the name hard HRM from. Hard HRM in the sense that it tries to adopt policies and practices that reduce employees to, say, a machine without adhering to the well-being or the complaints of employees. Okay. So the theory focuses on the nature of organization without paying much attention to the nature of employees who are labeled as lazy, slothful, and selfish. And the approach regards people as machinery. Okay, so that is what I mean by it got the name hard HRM from, because it tends to be too harsh or hard on employees. And it is the task of management to make the best use of them. And think about how we use machines. machine, until it breaks down, it cannot complain, even if it has worked so much within a particular number of hours. And if you liken that to managing of employees, it means that you were supposed to show up at the workplace, work assiduously, no complaints about my backache or my legs are paining me, having headache and all that. And once you are done, you can go back. So that is how it got the name Hard HRM. Now, it essentially tried to use HR systems and organizational structure by aligning them so that they can equally help in the attainment of organizational strategy. So the name matching model was derived from the notion of Theory X, which contains that the HR systems, so which is HR policies and practices, ranging from recruitment to training and development, can be integrated with the way the organization's structure appears, so that it can also be vertically aligned towards the attainment of organizational strategies. So because the Theory X seeks to align these three parameters, HR systems, organizational structure, and organizational strategy together, we call it the matching model. Okay. So now, any question on the Michigan model or the Hard HRM or the matching model? If there are no questions, then let's quickly move on to the Harvard model or the soft HRM. Over time, when the Industrial Revolution was at its peak, a lot of union activities emerged to challenge the status quo. And what I mean by the status quo was how employees were being managed. And they saw it as a very bad and inhumane way of getting the best out of employees, particularly if you want to get the best out of them, but you do not regard their well-being and you are reducing them to machines. It wasn't right. And so the Harvard model was an alternative theory that was propounded to the management of employees, which essentially paid keen attention to the feelings and emotions or the well-being of employees. And so because it was poised at addressing organizational imperatives as well as the needs of employees, it was characterized as soft HRM. So another name for the Harvard model is soft HRM because it tends to be more humane towards the management of employees to achieve organizational goals. And it is also characterized as Theory Y because it was presented as an alternative to the Theory X, which tend to be excessively harsh on the use of employees for organizational goal attainment. So the Theory Y is totally opposite to Theory X, and it perceives employees as having emotions. Employees are humans. They also have feelings. If you want to get the best out of them, you need to motivate or incentivize them. And that one will boost their morale to also work very hard for the company. And that is where the soft HRM is coming from. And it continues that employees are not machines, and reducing them or comparing them to machines is it's a non-starter. It's a total disrespect and inhumane. And so there is a need to take active interest in the work as they achieve personal realization through the work. So what are managers expected to do? Managers must try to keep their motivation high. And when I say there, I'm referring to the motivation of employees. So if managers want to get the best out of employees, they need to keep the motivation level of these employees high to enable them realize their potential. And by motivation, I'm referring to both intrinsic and extrinsic. Intrinsic could be designing the workplace to be appealing or very much engaging to the needs of the employee, making the working environment attractive to work in. It could also be extrinsic by using some sort of financial rewards to incentivize them, to compensate them for the number of hours that they are delivering their service to the company. So when you do all these things, they are humans. They also think and expect that they reciprocate all that they are getting in return for the company to also benefit. So this approach says that people are not inherently lazy and are fit, and in fact are self-responsible. So it's also premised on the notion that employees are not intrinsically lazy, but they are rather humans who have feelings and emotions. And if you're able to drive them through proper incentive packages, both financial and non-financial, then they will also be equally responsible by working very well for the company to achieve its goals. So they can be proactive and creative if you give them the room to operate. And management must encourage but not coerce or discourage them to further the goals of the company. So that is the Harvard model or the soft HRM. Now, what is the conclusion on both theories? Perusing the philosophical underpinnings of both hard HRM and soft HRM, or the Michigan model and the Harvard model, presents two schools of thoughts whose worldview and the time where they were propounded influence the reasoning that are underpinning how they expect managers to get the best out of employees. So you realize that hard HRM, if it is applied to the latter, it may rather demoralize employees. But if it is managed very well so that it does not come across as inhumane to employees, it may be able to get the best out of employees, thereby ensuring the effectiveness and efficiency of organizational goal attainment. Soft HRM too, even though it comes across as more humane to employees, if it is applied to the latter, it may create a working environment where employees are overly pampered without actually contributing to organizational success. In other words, employees may end up receiving their pay every month, but if you peruse their contribution to the organizational goal attainment, you realize it is negligible. So each of these theories have their pluses and their minuses. And so whether you adopt hard HRM or soft HRM, both theories accept that human resources are critical for the success of any business. In other words, without human resources, the organization may not be able to achieve its productive targets. So they will need these humans to come around and turn the other factors of production or add value to it. And none of these two approaches of HRM work perfectly, since they all have their pluses and their minuses, and neither represent the reality because they are influenced by the era where they were propounded. And people can behave in different ways and cannot be categorized as machines or responsible fellow merely. So case by case, depending on the organization where you find yourself and the culture that permeates over there, you will need to interrogate the kind of employees you have, and that will also inform how you implement HR policies and practices to get the best out of it. And this means that a good manager must adhere to a style of his own, taking some points from the hard HRM, the aspects of it which you think are good, and some points from soft HRM, to have a good mix of the two to suit his requirements. And this means that as a manager, when you read some of these theories to guide the way you man your company, you are expected to critically analyze it and thereafter critique it to see the pluses and minuses so that you can be picking some lessons from it. And once you're able to do this, as you pick one or two theories, you will be able to forge your own HR policies and practices that fits the crop of employees you have. So in conclusion, an organization can guess competitive advantage over its rivals only when it utilizes human resources effectively, making use of their expertise, keeping them sufficiently and motivated to achieve organizational goals, which means that you have to critically analyze the objective you want to attain, then the quality and quantity of human resources you have at your disposal, and draw on some of the lessons that you have picked from these theories in order to forge a proper HR policy and practice. Any questions so far on the models of HR? Okay, if there are no questions, then let's make progress. So we are now transitioning onto the second part of today's lecture, which is on human resource planning. Human resource planning. And some of the books caption it as workforce planning or manpower planning. Now, the earlier management and HR books, since they were written around the Industrial Revolution era, they characterize it as manpower planning because they were still fixated with using humans as machines. And at that point in time, the skills and abilities of employees were contingent more on their physical structure, so your physical strength, not necessarily on your mental fortitude or the quality of your intellect. And so manpower planning is more or less centered around using the physical strength of employees to achieve organizational imperatives. So you are planning towards the quantity and quality of physically able people that you can use to achieve a given objective or operational targets. So if the more appropriate way of captioning this is human resource planning, but I'm giving you all these variations so that if you are reading and you come across them, you understand the perspective where they are hailing from. So what is human resource planning? Human resource planning can be defined severally. One of the definitions is that it is a process of identifying how many people needs to be selected for what job, at what time. So anytime an HR manager or a manager is trying to understand the number of people that will be needed to perform a particular job at a particular time, at a particular place, then the manager is essentially engaging in human resource planning. Now, the process of analyzing and identifying the need for and availability of human resources so that organization can meet its objectives can also be construed as an explanation of human resource planning. So let's interrogate this definition too. Anytime a manager makes an attempt to analyze and identify the need for human resources, and when you say the need for, it is in terms of the quality and quantity and the availability of human resources. Availability means of what quality and quantity will be available so that an organization can achieve or meet its objectives. And you are doing human resource planning. So essentially, human resource planning is to get the right number of people with the right skills, that is the quality, experience, competencies in the right jobs at the right time at a minimum cost. So when an attempt is made to get employees of right quality in terms of their knowledge, skills, competencies, and experience at the right job, and when you say at the right job, it means you are matching these qualities of employees with the jobs that their skills actually demand them to perform, so that you do not put square pegs in one hole. At the right time. Well, at the right time is also very important, because if you are going to, for instance, create another campus for GCTU in the next 5 years. So for discussion's sake, let's assume GCTU intends to create another campus in Ivory Coast in the next 5 years. Then the timing over there will mean that it will not be reasonable to start doing your recruitment of the administrative and non-administrative staff now, because it will be a huge cost to the university. And you know, the university depends on the fees that will be generated from running a campus to pay the staff. So that if the campus is going to be available 5 years' time, then the time will not be right for us to do recruitment and selection. So when we are planning towards some of these decisions, it is important that we place much premium on the timing, so that you don't end up having so many hands chasing few jobs, which will require or force the organization to lay some people off. And we don't also want to have a situation where we have few hands chasing so many jobs, and this may result in people overworking and doing overtime. That will also be an additional cost. So all these things fall within the purview of human resource planning, and at a minimum cost. So human resources are part of an organization, and they ensure that the business production requirements are met in an efficient and effective manner. And it is also a universal truism that anytime you have too many hands or too many people working in an organization, it is quite challenging, because you have to deal with this bloated payroll. And unfortunately, a lot of people will be loafing around and not necessarily contributing to organizational success, but they will expect to be paid. So that is why we say too many people in an organization chasing few jobs is a challenge that needs to be managed. And the reverse is true. So if you have too many hands, it may force us to engage in action plans such as laying some people off or downsizing. And all these action plans are put forth to remedy the higher labor expenses that the organization will be incurring. And when I say the reverse is true, I mean that having too few people or employees in an organization is equally challenging or difficult. And this is true because there will be too much pressure on them to meet production requirements. And there will also be the occurrence of more overtime issues. So the employees will have to be doing a lot of overtime, which the company has to be paying. So how do you achieve an equilibrium in terms of the workforce we have at the organization and the quantum of job that needs to be done? It can be reconciled through adequate and sufficient human resource planning. So what are the objectives or the relevance of human resource planning? The first one is that it ensures adequate supply of manpower or human resources as and when they are required. So because the human resource planning preempts some of the things that are likely to happen in the lifeline of the company, it is able to adequately predict the number of people that will be needed and when those people, when exactly they will be needed. So that is essentially the first one. So in fact, the first point seeks to explain the people that will not only be needed, but also available because of the word supply over here. It explains not only the people that will be needed, but those that will be available. And when you say available, in terms of people, it will be considering or projecting how many members of the company are likely to go on retirement, how many people may be going on leave, how many people may also not be available because of the seasons that we will be going through, and so on and so forth. The second objective or importance of human resource planning is that it ensures proper use of existing human resources in the organization. So because human resource planning peruse the quality and quantity of human resources that are at the disposal of an organization, it also goes forth to make sure that these human resources, in terms of their quality and quantity, they are matched with job portfolios which meets their competencies and their skills. Now, thirdly, human resource planning also seeks to focus future requirements of human resources with different levels of skills. Now, when we say it seeks to focus future requirements of human resources, it means that it looks into the future and predicts, let's say, possible technologies or innovations that may be relevant for the survival of the company in the business environment. So that if maybe there is the need for the company to transition from the manual way of operating to the use of a more sophisticated technology or computing, then this forecast will also require that the current crop of employees need to be given adequate training and development for them to be prepared for what is at stake for the company in the future. Now, the fourth one is that it also assesses the surplus or shortage, if any, of human resources available over a specified period of time. Now, in order to determine whether you are having so many hands chasing few jobs or so many jobs but few hands handling them, there is the need for you to match the outcome of your human resource forecast. So let's say in the example I gave, we intend to set up another campus, and according to our checks and our analysis, it came to bear that we will need at least 50 people to man this new campus. Now, where are we going to get this 50 workforce from? Can we bring them from the current available campuses, or anytime we move any of the available members of the company to this new campus that we intend to set up, there is going to be a challenge, or there is going to be a vacuum at the current campuses. If this is the case, then when we match the need for human resources for the campus that we are going to create and the available human resources that we have now, there is likely to be either a surplus or a shortage. And this analysis will help us to know whether it is suitable for us to take an action plan such as recruiting more hands when the time is right, or rather transferring people from the available campuses to the new one that we are going to have. So all these assessments are possible when you conduct human resource planning. Then the fifth one is that it also helps to anticipate the impact of technology on jobs and requirements for human resources. So like I was explaining earlier on, if you plan of integrating any form of technology to the conduct of your organization, then human resource planning will adequately help you to simulate how this technology is likely to affect productivity so that you can properly align and integrate it with your production process. Then the sixth one is that it also provides a lead time available to select and train the required additional human resources over a specified time period. And when we say it provides a lead time, it gives you a glimpse of what is likely to happen in the future. And before you get to this futuristic self of the company, you have the luxury of time to prepare the current state of the company in terms of which people need to be selected. And these people, what sort of training and development should be administered to them. And all this room or time that will elapse will help you to adequately get ready for what is ahead for of the company. Any questions so far? Any question? So I have explained what human resource planning is, and I indicated that essentially it refers to the processes that help the HR manager to ascertain the number of human resources that will be required to perform a given task, the quality of these human resources. And when I say the quality, it means the skills, competencies, and experiences that they must possess. Then the time where these human resources need to be deployed to achieve organizational strategic imperatives. And even where in the organization you are going to deploy these human resources. And all these things need to be managed in order to make a rational use of organizational finances. So costs, it has to be managed in a cost-effective and efficient way. Now, a number of reasons also account for why it is important for us to engage in human resource planning. And some of them include helping to integrate technology and its impact to organizational process. And it also includes predicting what is likely to happen in the future and taking the necessary steps to remedy it. It helps you to know the right interventions you can put in place in terms of training and development, and so on and so forth. So we are now going to consider the processes or the steps, or if you like, the stages that we go through when we say we are embarking on human resource planning. And it is called a process because it is not a one-time activity. It needs to go on until a point in the time of the company where they can say they have achieved their set targets or goals. So let's look at the process. The process of human resource planning begins with identifying the corporate objectives of the organization. And when I say the corporate objectives, it is essentially the organization's strategic objectives, or what the organization intends to achieve in the future. So any human resource planning commences with, first of all, the identification and understanding of what the company seeks to achieve in the future. And this may require the peruse of the company's mission and vision, what it stands for, what it identifies as its values. Now, having identified the objectives of the company, then the HR manager can also look within the company to analyze how it can harness human resources to help the company forge ahead in terms of attaining these strategic objectives. So the HR department comes in by conducting what we call environmental scanning. Environmental scanning. So that will be the second stage. And in environmental scanning, we scan both the internal environment and the external environment. Please, I'm repeating it again. At the second stage, which borders on environmental scanning, an attempt is made to scan both inside and outside the company. So internal environmental scanning and external environmental scanning. Now, it is important to scan both inside and outside the organization because organization does not operate on an island. And I say it does not operate as if it is an island. Rather, it operates in the larger social environment, which is also influenced by a lot of factors. So if you pick the external environment of an organization, every organization is influenced by external factors such as economic policies that will be churned out by the government of the day. It is also influenced by political factors, whether the country is having a stable political experience or an unstable one where there is almost always conflict. It is also influenced by the quality of workforce that are coming out of universities and other avenues where we can recruit and select. It is also characterized by the nature of competition, which is occurring over there. So that if it is cutting through, then there will be no room for you to relax. So these are some of the external environmental factors. Then internal environmental factors. Essentially, the HR does an internal inventory audit to understand and appreciate the quantity and quality of human resources that are readily available to the company. So in terms of quantity, how many people do you currently have working for you? And of these people, what are their qualities? Do they actually fit the portfolios they've been given to man, and so on and so forth? Now, it is important for you to do this scan because it is the information that you will derive from the external environment and the internal environment, which will inform how you forecast for human resources in order to help the company to achieve its strategic objectives. So once the HR is now privy to the information that maintains in the external environment, as well as the internal inventory of HR capability, then they can continue with what we call HR forecasting or human resource forecasting. Essentially, there are two typologies of HR forecasting. Either the HR is conducting demand forecasting or they are conducting supply forecasting. So what is the difference? Anytime an attempt is made by the HR to ascertain the number of people that will be needed for an organization to achieve its long-term objectives, then we say we are conducting demand forecasting. And you can demand that. It means what you would need, what you are demanding for. So demand forecasting essentially concentrates on an attempt to predict the need for human resources in terms of their quality and quantity. Whereas supply forecasting also tries to ascertain the number of human resources that will be available in terms of their quality and quantity to help the organization achieve its strategic imperatives. So supply is to available human resources forecasting, whereas demand is ascertaining the need for human resource forecasting. Now, anytime we do demand forecasting, we will be presented with some figures. And anytime we do supply forecasting too, we will be presented with some figures. So the outcome of the demand forecasting may project that in order to manage the new campus that we intend to set up, we will need at least 50 people for the campus to work very, very well. But the supply forecasting is currently indicating that we already have 500 workforce in the company. And if we decide to maybe transfer some of them to the new campus we are going to develop, it may not affect the success of the company. So one side is giving you 50, another side is projecting that there may be a surplus of 20. Okay, so let me write it down so that you can put them into perspective. Assuming we did demand forecasting and we said we will need 50, just a minute, let me connect my pen so that I can write very well. Hello, can you see my screen? Hello, can you all see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Good, good. So I am going to explain what I'm doing with figures so that you can put it into their right perspectives. I started by saying that in demand forecasting, we essentially try to ascertain the need for human resources in terms of their quality and quantity. And when I say we are ascertaining the need for, we are trying to project how many people will be required to achieve a particular target. So let's assume that the new campus that GCTU is trying to establish, the demand forecast indicates that to be successful in managing that campus, 50 workforce, both administrative and non-administrative, will be required. Now, what about the supply forecasting? The supply forecasting will also look at the current crop of employees that are currently available to ascertain their qualities and quantity. And after perusing this, we came to a conclusion that according to our forecast, we may have only 20 supplied to this new campus. We need 50 to be successful. But the supply forecasting suggested that if we do all our pluses and minuses, we cross our T's and dot our I's, we are going to have only 20 people to send to the new campus that we are going to manage. This indicates that we have to estimate the gap between the need for human resources, that is the 50 over here, and the availability of human resources, that is 20. So when we say you are estimating the manpower gaps, it essentially means that you are trying to reconcile the difference between the need for and availability of human resources. So those of you who are mathematically good, quickly subtract 20 from 50 for me.
30.
30, sir.
Oh, good. So your arithmetic is very, very sharp. So the 30 that we got is the outcome of the estimation of manpower gaps, which means that when we match the demand and supply, that is the 50 with the 20, we are still falling short of 30 workforce. Now, because what we need is more than what is available, in HR context, we will call it a shortage. And you all understand why it is a shortage, right? It is a shortage because I said we will need 50 people to manage the campus. But the supply indicates that we have only 20. So it means that we will have to get the difference, which is an additional 30. And because we are going to add 30 more people to the 20 which is available, the 30 becomes the shortage. Now, let me give you another scenario. Let's assume the outcome of our demand forecasting suggested that we will need 50 workforce to work in the new campus that we are establishing. But the outcome of supply forecasting also emerged that, in fact, we already have about 70 people that can be transferred to work for the new campus without it affecting the shape of our company. So the supply is giving us 70, but we actually need only 50. Because in this scenario, we have more people than what we actually need. In HR terms, we call that surplus. And the reason why we call it surplus is that we are having more than what we actually need. So the difference between the 50 and the 70 over here, we call it surplus. Please, any questions so far? Any questions so far as far as the shortage and surplus of HR outcomes are concerned?
Please, can you repeat it again?
Repeat which one? What do you want me to repeat?
The shortage and the surplus.
Okay. So let me start with the shortage. Now, I began by indicating that there are two main typologies of HR forecasting, and this includes demand forecasting and supply forecasting. In demand forecasting, the prime object of the HR forecaster is to look into the future and ascertain the total number of human resources that will be needed in order for the company to manage and achieve their objectives. And in supply forecasting, an attempt is made by the HR forecaster to ascertain the number of people that will be available in terms of their quality and quantity so that the organization can achieve its objectives. And I cited an example that, let's assume GCTU as an institution is intending to set up another campus in Ivory Coast. Now, to have an understanding of the number of people that we will need to manage this new campus in Ivory Coast in order for the campus to also flourish. The demand forecasting results indicated that we will need 50 workforce or 50 employees, both academic and non-academic. Now, the supply forecasting also indicated that currently, if we peruse all the employees we have, we can still take 20 out of it and send them to this new campus without having any challenges. Now, you will realize that when we take the 20 to the new campus in Ivory Coast, it will not be enough. So we still have to add up because we are going to top up the 20 with an additional 30. And that was why I asked you to subtract 20. So 20 is available and we actually needed 50, right? So if you do the subtraction, you get 30. Because you will need additional 30 people in order to make up for what we actually wanted, which is the 50. We call this human resource deficits. We call the difference that we are going to either recruit and select or train, transfer to that place as deficit. So that is the first scenario. There can also be another scenario whereby the number of human resources that we require to manage the new campus is 50. But when we did our HR audits, we realized that, in fact, we currently have a lot of people that are actually not being used efficiently across our existing campuses. And so when we take 70, we transfer 70 to the new campus where we are going, it will not affect us anyway. In fact, it is actually going to make us use efficient and effective use of our resources. So because we now have the resources abundant, but we only need 50 of them, the outcome of this matching, that is matching the demand and the supply, will result in human resource surplus. So the 20 you get over here is called surplus of human resources. Please, is it clear now?
Yes, sir.
Good.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Now, there can also be a third scenario. There can be a third scenario, and that one it is not always likely, but it is a possibility. There can be a situation where the demand forecast outcome will be equal to the supply forecast outcome. So the demand will be 50, and your HR inventory tool will show that in terms of supply, you have 50. So you demanded 50, okay? And the supply was also 50, and that one will give you 0. So in this scenario, we call it HR equilibrium. There is neither shortage or surplus. There is equilibrium in equilibrium of human resources, and that is HR equilibrium. So that is a third scenario. Please, any questions so far?
That's it.
Yes, hello, go on.
Please, as the HR need 50 workers, and now he had 20. Is the organization going to do any other package to motivate the workers to do the rest of the work or what?
Okay, Alpha, thank you very much for your question. So that is the next thing I'm going to explain. So anytime there is a shortage or a surplus, it also has to be addressed with some form of action plans. So let's start with the question Alpha asked. Assuming we needed 50, but we only have 20 available, which means that there is an HR deficit or shortage. When there is a deficit or a shortage, some of the action plans that can be used to address it include recruitment and selection. So to deal with the shortage, you will have to go outside the organization and recruit new people that have what it takes to come and fill those vacant positions. So that is one of the action plans. Now, when you recruit these people, it is also necessary that you train and develop them to imbibe into the organization's culture and way of working. You may also adopt an action plan such as transferring employees from some of the available campuses to the new one that you'll be setting up to cater for the deficits or shortage. So these are some of the avenues that you can do. And in doing all these things, it is also important that you incentivize them to align with the new challenges that they are going to face over there. Because don't forget, for instance, if you are transferring people from one place to the other, it is imperative that you give them some incentives, maybe in terms of their commuting from the old place to the new place. You will have to give them some allowance to cater for the new challenges that they are going to face over there, because they are leaving the comfort of their current place of destination, and they are going to man a new one. So all these are some of the action plans that you can use to address situations where the outcome between matching of demand and supply forecasting results in a deficit or a shortage. In instances where there is a surplus of human resources, which means that the match of your demand forecasting outcome and that of your supply forecasting outcome indicated that you have so many hands chasing few jobs. How do you manage it? Or what are some of the action plans that you can use to resolve it? Some of the action plans, which I construe as lenient, is that you can restrict hiring. And when we say you are restricting hiring, it means you are placing a freeze on recruitment and selection. So for some time, until things tilt to the other side, you are not going to engage in recruitment and selection, but you are rather going to make efficient use of the resources that you currently have. So that is the first one, restricting hiring. The second option which is available is laying off employees. And that is actually a hard one because we are talking about bread and butter issues over here. And layoff will mean that people whose performance appraisal records suggest that they are not so relevant, or in terms of their contribution to organizational success, it is not so high, then you take care of them by laying such people off, of course, with compensation for taking such decisions. Then there could also be an alternative way of addressing surplus, which we call voluntary retirement schemes. And in voluntary retirement schemes, it is actually opened up to individuals that are nearing the retirement age, but are not currently due. So such people can be also given these options to go on early retirement in lieu of they getting the benefits that are due them. Another option that can also be used to manage human resource surplus is reducing the number of hours that the employees previously worked. This means that you have to sit down with them as management and discuss the options which are available, such as either laying some off or presenting another option that you can maintain all of them, but the number of hours that they were previously working, and which was also reflecting in how much they were paid, is now going to be rationalized, so that if together they agree that you have to maintain all of them, then you can rationalize by reducing the quantum of hours that they work, until it gets to a point in time where things have restored to its normalcy. Then maybe you can revert back to their previous working hours. So these specific things under the surplus and shortage are some of the action plans that can be used to address situations where maybe there is a surplus or a shortage of human resources. Now, following the implementation of any of these action plans, it is also proper for HR to continuously monitor, control, and give feedback into the system. So the monitoring, control, and feedback portion over here requires that after implementing an action plan, let's say freezing or restricting hiring, you need to monitor the system to see whether the organization is progressing towards the achievement of its strategic objectives, or whether the demand for production has gone up. If the demand for the production goes up, it means that something has changed in your initial forecast. So you quickly have to control, and by control, it means that if previously you reduce the number of hours or you froze recruitment and selection, then you quickly have to bring in more hands. And so that is the essence of the monitoring, control, and feedback. For that reason, it is argued that human resource planning process is not only continuous, but also an iterative managerial activity. Let me spell the iterative for you. And please, these things, it is important you write it somewhere so that when you are reading, you can put it into its right perspective. Iterative. Depending on the secondary school you attended, you can say iterative, iterative, or iterative. Any of them is accepted. But when we say it is iterative, it essentially means that you go back and forth. And by going back and forth, when you implement a particular action plan and the business environment changes, the demand for your production also changes, you quickly have to revisit the action plan to alter it a little bit in order for you to still be on track towards achieving your strategic objectives. So if maybe initially you thought transfer was going to solve the problem, and so you transfer some key people to the new campus, and you realize by transferring them over there, the place that they left is also experiencing some challenges. This means that transfer will not be able to address the problem permanently. So quickly, you have to rather recruit people and train them to come and fit the vacuums that have been created. So you started with transfer. You now came back to recruitment and selection, and you are training and so on and so forth. So because of that back and forth activities which characterize the human resource planning process, we say it is also an iterative process. So essentially, the human resource planning process is both continuous and iterative. It is continuous because it begins from the assessment of an organization's strategic objectives through other stages such as environmental scanning, human resource forecasting, matching of these forecasting, taking an action plan, and monitoring, controlling, and giving feedback into the system. it is also iterative because when it gets to the implementation of the action plan, it does not end there. There is the need for us to control the day-to-day activities, week-to-week activities of the organization so that it does not deviate from the attainment of the organization's strategic imperative. So because of this back and forth that the HR process goes through until a more robust plan is developed to achieve the set objective, we say it is iterative. Now, let me take some questions. Abigail Mensah.
Sir.
Yeah, Abigail,
Sir,
I can see your
please,
hand up.
yes, sir. Sir, please, you made mention of where there is a deficit and a surplus.
Yes.
So, earlier you said that when there is a deficit, you need to transfer some of the people from their place of work to another place. In that manner, you have to give them incentives.
Yes.
In the same organization or the same institution. But
Yeah.
if there is no surplus, that one, they need to recruit or select or hire people from outside. That one, if they select people from outside, they need to recruit them. So I want to ask, through the process of recruitment of the employees, would they be also be given incentives?
The new ones that are coming in, those people, they are now joining the company. So the only incentive they will get is the compensation and benefit they will receive for their service to the organization. There wouldn't be any form of incentive to attract them into the company. The company itself must be an organization of choice that such people we are bringing on board aspires to work for. Okay. Exactly. So it will be more or less like if maybe you think you can get students from GCTU to recruit them into your company, then you go there to do maybe during their career fair, you invite the kind of people you are looking for to come and write an aptitude test. And if they are considered, then there will be selection interviews and so on and so forth.
Okay. So if until that process is done and they are selected as a permanent worker or an employee, that one, they will not be paid any incentives. But if they are selected or
they become permanent companies, members, then they will be paid.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Don't forget to, I would say, until someone is a member of your company, it wouldn't make any rational sense for you to be paying them. Okay. And we are, the essence of the human resource planning is to help you develop a plan that can guide the day-to-day management of employees. Let me take another question. Alpha has spoken, so let me go to Frank Che first.
Okay.
So Frank, go on.
Okay, so whenever there is surplus in a company, some companies decide to lay off workers.
Yes, it's one of the options.
Yeah, I want to ask, in some companies, whenever they lay off workers, I hear they pay like 3 months salary.
Yeah.
And they give them some money. And then some companies also doesn't give them anything at all. Like when they lay off workers, they don't really give them anything. Is there a law backing that in?
The labor law. This one, it is captured in the Ghana labor law. In fact, when a situation occurs where employees are laid off without they being granted their 3 months salary, it amounts to unfair labor practice and the company can be sued. So even if you do not have union members in it and you get a good lawyer who is familiar with some of these clauses in the labor law, they can pursue the company and you get millions of cedis.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Let me pick another question. Abednego Osei Adakwa. Abednego, go on.
Yes. sir, please, I wanted to ask if you have surplus, can the company decide to dash those workers to other companies so that later when they need them, then they will call them back? So I have surplus, like in football, you loan a footballer so that later when you need the footballer, you bring the footballer back. Can you apply that same thing to?
Oh, okay. I get what you mean now. In my experience, it doesn't happen in corporate practice. This is because you can, the employees, don't forget, employees are construed as vital assets. So when you say you are loaning them to your competitor, they will be going there to sell your trade secrets to your competitor, and the competitor will use it to have an edge over you. So it will be suicidal to be loaning your workforce to another company to use, so that when you need them, what about if you need them and the person says, no, I think they are rather an asset to me, so I'll not give them back to you. How are you going to handle it? So it's either you are laying them off, and when the time is right for you to pick them again, that is when the demand for your work goes up. Then you can give premium or priority to the people that you laid off. And this is very particularly common in the mining and oil and gas industry. So what Obeti said, redundancy, they are pioneer. They have laid some people off. They've gone and taken their packages. But maybe when production goes up and the gold business is booming and they are looking for people to recruit again, they give consideration to the people that they laid off. What I say. So that is how it is done outside the world of football. Patricia Ohinewa.
Sir,
Yeah,
sir,
Patricia.
please. Sir, please. You said that when the employees are laid off, when they lay off, when the company lay the employees off, they need to pay them 3 months salary.
Yeah.
What about when the employee wants to resign from the work too? Is it the company to pay them off 1 month, or I want to know about that one?
Okay, so the labor law also says that you have to give, when you want to resign from a company, then you have to give the company prior notice. And so assuming I want to resign from GCTU now, I have to give 3 months prior notice to my resignation. So I can't just wake up next week and say, I'm no longer going to work for GCTU. The essence of granting this prior notice is that it will give them the lead time to get a replacement for you. And that will also help in continuity of productivity, and as I said, the production process. Now, once you've given the notice, you will be paid the number of months that you are going to work until the notice is due. I don't know if it is clear.
I say. Sir, please, so the employee has to give the company a notice. 3 months.
Yes, at least 3 months notice.
Okay,
as an employee, if you just wake up and say, I am resigning without this notice, the company too can sue you. In fact, sometimes the suit can even affect the new company where you are working, because they are also supposed to do due diligence to verify whether you are not currently bonded with a given company. Alpha, you can now talk.
Yes, sir. Sir, please, I want to know some organizations, they will not give you any letter, any information, you'll be there.
Then they say they have fired you.
I've been sacked.
That one amounts to unfair labor practice. And if, as an individual, you pursue it through the right legal advice, the company will lose huge sums of money. But when I say pursuing it, it is not something that maybe when you start this month, by next month, the judgment will be passed. It is something that may take maybe years before the case is brought to its final conclusion. So if you pursue it very well, you will get remedies for that unfair termination. And again, when you have labor, I would say, when you have unions in your company, you can easily channel some of these grievances through your union, and they will work on it for you. You will be compensated accordingly. In fact, if it is they conclude that it's an unfair labor practice and you want to come back, that option will still be extended to you. Now, one last question, then I'll continue. Now, the Labor Act, you know, as potential HR management people, you have to be reading them. It should be your second Bible.
Hello, sir.
Yes, Paul.
Sir, please, I want to know this thing. As a public worker, can you also be laid off with that?
As a public worker, can you also be what?
Lay off because the staff are over.
Because the what? The time and our staff.
Because they have a
surplus
of.
No. Sir, you have been given a contract, and the contract has its rules of engagement. So they can tell you that at some point in time there is a surplus, and so they are going to lay you off. When they do that, then it will amount to an unfair labor practice. What they have to do is that they have to make sure they have something for you to do at any point in time. There was one hand, neighbor. Ernest, is it a new hand or is Ernest Sampana?
Right. Yes, sir. I want to be clear. I want to be clear about something with regards to the concept of layoff. Yes, sir. I want to be clear about one thing here with regards to the concept of layoff.
Okay.
We have HR as a body in an organization.
Sampana, your line is breaking.
Please, can you hear me?
Yeah, it's better now. Go on.
Okay. I said I wanted to be clear about something with regards to the concept of layoff.
Okay, go on.
HR as a body at an organization, and the company decided to lay off, meaning we are having a surplus. Does the HR pick and choose and lay some people off, or they visit or communicate to their head of department and get to know those who are surplus and get them laid off, or because they are a body on their own, they pick and choose and lay off? Is there a process that leads to the layoff? And second,
hey, take your time. In fact,
if you recruit
the question you are asking
in a month,
because your line is breaking, I'm not getting the head and tail of it. So let me try and address the first one. Then the other one, we can push it later on when we are done and we are having a discussion. So when we say layoff is going to occur in a company, it presupposes that we have done HR scanning and we are comparing the outcome of our demand and supply forecasting. And we came to the realization that at that point in time, we have so many hands idling around which are not contributing to organizational success. So if we want to lay off, what we will do is that we will pull, one way of doing it is pull the appraisal records of employees and see the ones that are characterized as promising candidates or assets to the company, and the ones that are also lagging behind in terms of their contribution to organizational success. So the indicators will point that the ones that are not so much hardworking or contributing will be the targeted ones that we are going to lay off. So it is an information that we will already be having the pointers to or the indicators to. And don't forget, these appraisals, it is not the HR. In fact, when you say the HR as a body, the HR is not a body. It is part of an organization. It is a department in the organization. So you can construe the organization rather as a body, not the HR as a body. When we are conducting performance appraisal, every department or unit that is involved has a supervisor or a manager over there. And these people are also involved in appraising their constituents. And so before the information gets to be recorded and kept in the human resource information system, or maybe in a folder at the HR department, your own department is aware whether you are an asset or you are a liability that needs to be dispensed. So anytime layoff comes onto the table, we pay attention to these records and pick the ones that we construe as liabilities in the company, and then we get rid of them. All right, let's make progress. So the explanations for all these processes, all the explanations that I gave for the human resource planning process. The explanations I gave for the human resource planning process are all in the slides here. So when you go, take your time and read through. And it may not be as sophisticated as I explained over here, but I expect you to make your own notes beyond these notes. I expect you to also add up from what you heard in class as we were interacting and from the book that you will be reading. I don't expect you to rely on only these bullets because they may not be sufficient or sophisticated as the explanations that I gave. So that will bring us to the end of the human resource planning process. Now we are going to pick human resource. Okay, let's quickly go through the factors that affect human resource planning process. I want to say when we are doing human resource planning, there are a number of considerations that we have to put in mind in order to get accurate forecasts. And some of them include the strategic plan of the organization. And what we mean by strategic plan is what the blueprints that the company is going to rely on to achieve their long-term objectives. So that is important. And if you remember, the first thing that I said is important is the organization's strategic objectives. And it is this strategic plan which will help us to achieve the objectives. So it is important we consider this one. Then organizational growth cycle, whether they are starting up, whether they are at the growth stage, the maturity or declining. So if they are starting up, then it means that we will need more hands. So a lot of recruitment and selection may suffice. If it is growing too, they can afford to bring more hands to help consolidate the growth. If they are maturing, they can decide to do that. But if they are declining, then it will not be proper to be recruiting more hands. Rather, it will be proper to introduce some form of T&D and incentive packages that can help rekindle the morale of the workforce. So that's another consideration. Then environmental uncertainties, which also fits into what I indicated as conducting environmental scan. We conduct environmental scan by considering what is happening both inside and outside the organization. And the reason why we pay attention to the inside or within the organization is that you want to understand the strengths and weaknesses of you as a company so that you can work towards it and emerge as a more stronger force to reckon with. We also consider the external environments because over there too, you are confronted with a lot of threats and opportunities. The threats could be your competing organizations or your rivals that are in the same line of businesses. And so anytime they are having an edge over you, you really have to catch up. And opportunities too could be the untapped markets where maybe other companies have not thought about going there. And so you may be able to capitalize it and expand your market so that you have you'll be able to attain competitive advantage. The nature of jobs in the company, whether currently there are vacancies, there are likely to be promotions, if you have expansion strategies or intentions, or if there's an intention to strike off some levels in management, that is, reduce some levels or structures within the organizational structure. All those things will also inform how you plan. Then the most important thing is budget and financial position of the organization. You can have all the nice ideas of bringing on board individuals with distinctive capabilities and procuring the right technology. But if you do not have the financial muscle to deploy it, then it will remain on paper. So the financial position and the considerations of the company also impacts HR planning. Now, let's go on to human resource forecasting in details. I would say one of the stages, which was the third stage of human resource planning process, was to engage in human resource forecasting. And I explained earlier on in my introductory remarks that human resource forecasting is the process of estimating the demand for and the supply of human resources in an organization in terms of their quality and quantity. So anytime we talk about human resource forecasting, we are essentially trying to estimate the number of human resources that will be needed or that will be available in the organization in terms of their quality and quantity. Now, so that is essentially human resource forecasting. And there are two main types of human resource forecasting. But before I come to the two main types, HR forecasting can be conducted using either a qualitative technique or a quantitative technique. The projection into the future to foresee some of the likely human resources that the company can have in terms of their quality and quantity can be conducted through a qualitative means or a quantitative means. Now, when we say we are using a quantitative means to conduct human resource forecasting, it means that all our projections into the future will rely on numbers or hardcore data, facts, and some level of computations to derive the need for and availability of human resources. But when we say we are using qualitative approach, it means that the focus into the future to ascertain the quality and quantity of human resources that may be needed or that may be available is derived through subjective judgment or expertise of the HR forecaster. Subjective judgment means that they are relying on their past experiences, lessons that they've learned in the community of practice, and as that line of production. And they are relying on it to predict what is likely to be the situation as far as the need for the availability of human resources is concerned. So whereas the quantitative one relies on numbers and use some level of arithmetic or mathematical models and data to do the estimations, the qualitative ones rely on subjective judgment and opinions of experts that have practiced in that company for a very long time. Okay, so I have said two main things. The first thing I said is that HR forecasting can be done either qualitatively or it can be done quantitatively. And when we say we are doing it qualitatively, it means that we are relying on the subjective expertise and experiences of members of the company to do the projections. But when we say we are using quantitative approach, it means that we are relying on hardcore data, numerical or mathematical facts to make projections. So there are two main types of HR forecasting, whether we are doing it quantitative or qualitative. There are two main types. We have the demand forecasting and the supply forecasting. And I mentioned it when I was explaining the HR planning process. So when we say we are doing demand forecasting, what does it mean? When we say we are doing supply forecasting, what does it mean? I have already explained it, but because I want you to now pay attention to the details and how we do it, we are still going to look at them again. So we are starting with demand forecasting. And right after that, we will also go on with supply forecasting. Demand forecasting denotes the process of determining the future needs of human resources in terms of their quality and quantity. It denotes the process of ascertaining the future need of human resources in terms of their quality and quantity, which means that as we speak now, maybe you don't need them, but you need them when, for instance, the campus we are going to create, the campus is ready and we want to run it. So when you are thinking about the people that you will need in future to achieve a particular objective, and of these people, what sort of quality and quantity should they come with? Then we say we are doing demand forecasting. Oh, so demand in economics means a need for something. Now, it is done to meet the future personnel requirements of the organization to achieve the desired level of output. And future human resource needs can be estimated with the help of organizations' current human resource situation and analysis and organizational plan and procedure. So essentially, the basis of the forecast must be the annual budget. So annual budget is how they have planned to finance the activities of the company in the course of the year. A long-term corporate plan, which is the strategic objectives, that starts the process of human resource planning, and which are translated into activity levels for each function and department. Into any company that you go into, the corporate objective, and I said the long-term objectives are broken down, and each department, ranging from marketing department to accounting and finance, will have their own way of contributing to the attainment of this long-term objectives. So once they break it down or they translate it to activity level, then they will be able to communicate whether they will need more hands or they will need less hands. And all these activities will also help us to know whether we will, how we will project into the future. So demand forecasting essentially tries to identify the core human resources that will be needed to maintain the organization's missions and goals. And the end result of the demand forecasting is the identification of the required number of employees in an organization and the necessary functions that the employee must perform to meet the organizational objectives. So a number of considerations need to be tackled when we are conducting demand forecasting. In other words, in order for you to do a diligent forecast into the future to ascertain the number of people that you need or require to be successful in achieving your organizational objectives. Some of the factors include the outcome of the environmental scanning that you'll be doing. The environmental scanning will tell you your threats and the opportunities outside which you may want to capitalize on. And it may also tell you your strengths and your weaknesses. So it is something that you need to consider. The organization's future strategic goals, which was the first thing that I said you have to consider. The strategic objectives of the company, the expected demand for products and services, so that if you think maybe going into the Christmas, the demand for your services will skyrocket, then you can decide to bring some more hands around that time and then use them for that period of time in order to meet your productive targets. Estimated productivity measures of workforce, whether you think there is likely to be stable, increase or decrease productivity, all these will influence the demand forecasting. Then the design that you are likely to, the job design you intend to use, whether you are going to introduce some form of technology or there's likely to be some level of administrative changes, whether you are going to adopt some sort of job rotation, enlargement, enrichment, and so on and so forth. All these needs to be considered. Projected budget and financial resources, and so on and so forth. So these are the factors that needs to be considered. In fact, there are a number of them, but at this level, you can work around this. You need to consider them before you conduct human resource forecasting. And these factors can also be called predictors of human resource demand. Predictors of human resource demand. They are called predictors because each of them have a contributory role to play as far as the ascertainment of the demand for human resources is concerned. So if, for instance, we are using a mathematical approach to do the estimation for human resources and also to conduct demand forecasting, then we will assign numerical weights to these factors. We will assign numerical weights to them. So, yes, that is it. Particularly if we are using maybe the regression approach to conduct demand forecasting, then environmental scan as a predictor will have a numerical weight. Strategic objective will have a numerical weight, and so on and so forth. So that when you are doing the computations, the numbers will make sense. Now, as I mentioned earlier on, whether you are conducting demand forecasting or supply forecasting, they can be done quantitatively and they can also be done qualitatively. So we are now, I'm not sure how the end of semester exams is going to be like because I'm teaching it with other lecturers. And so that is why I'm introducing you to all these nuances so that just in case at this level, they want you to write something about it, then you will know what to do. So when you are asked to explain a quantitative technique that can be used to conduct human resource demand forecasting. And I say human resource supply forecasting. One of the quantitative techniques is what we call trend analysis. Trend analysis. And it is called a quantitative approach of ascertaining of conducting human resource forecasting because it relies on numbers. It does not rely on the subjective judgment of the HR manager or the HR forecaster. So trend analysis. Essentially, trend analysis seeks to, sorry, can you see my screen? Okay.
Yes,
Trend analysis seeks to predict the demand for labor. So labor over here is used in place of employees. Trend analysis seeks to predict the demand for labor based on the projections of past or historical relationship patterns over a number of years. As one of the simplest methods of forecasting HR demand, trend analysis assumes that an organization's past employment needs are indicative of future needs when linked with an operational index. Okay, so let me break it down. Trend analysis. It is a quantitative approach because it relies on numbers. And the numbers in this context will be past or historical employment patterns. So it means that before a company can use trend analysis to do human resource forecasting for the company, then the company must have an archive or an information that has been stored on all past employment situations. So that by perusing these past employment situations, you can see the trajectory of events from the past, and based on this trajectory, look into the future and make some predictions. So let's consider the example below. If a business has grown by 10% each year for the past 7 years, managers can anticipate that this trend will continue. Hence, an increase in employee member across the past 7 years will be projected to continue into the future. So let me try and break this down for you. Now, the first thing you need before you can conduct trend analysis is that you need archival or historical data from the past. And this means that the company must be good in terms of their record keeping. Now, let's assume, so for the purpose of an illustration, let's assume that we have a water bottling company. So let me quickly scribble something down. A water bottling company. And in year 1, this is year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, and we are now in we are projecting for year 1. Let's assume in year 1. So in year 1, the index that we are using to do the estimation is the growth. Let's assume in year 1 we had 10 employees, and percentage of growth for that particular year, it was 10%. Okay. Now in year 2, we had 20 employees over there. Now, the percentage of growth over there was also 10%. In year 3, the company had expanded, and so we had 25 employees working for us. Still, the percentage of growth was 10%. In year 4, the demand for our goods and services was still skyrocketing. And so we had 30 employees. The percentage of growth was what? 10%. Now we are now in year 4. We are also estimating that we are now trying to estimate the number of workforce that should be available for us in the next coming year, considering the constant growth in our in our production performance, and also considering the number of people that we have been using over the past. Trend analysis will say that because over the past years, our growth has been constant. Every year we get 10% growth. Every year we get 10% growth. The trend or the trajectory suggests that unless events points to the contrary or we encounter supervening events, we are still likely to get 10% growth in the next year, which is a future. So on that basis, we can also, because we are anticipating a growth, we can also anticipate to add some few more hands to our workforce. So we can decide to say, because the difference between last year and this year was over the last past years, it's been, so from here to this one, it was 10. From here to this one, it was 5. From here to here, it was 5. So 5 plus 5 plus 10, 20. Then divided by 4, it will be 5. So we can decide to add 5 more employees to this. That would be a typical trend analysis. Is it clear? All right. So let's look at the next technique. Abigail Mensah.
Sir,
Yeah, Abigail.
the trend analysis, you said because there's a constant
Growth.
progression
Yeah.
of the organization, it seems to always employ some people, but they always get the same outcome. So I'm asking, would it be a possibility that if still they add more employees, they get a same outcome? So can't they also make a decision that they will reduce their employees to get the same outcome? Because if they reduce, if they have 10 employees, they get 10% outcome.
Okay.
And now
So I understand you. Let me explain that portion very well for you to get it. Now, so 10%, we know. So let's assume for the year 1, the growth rate, which was 10%, it's amounted to, in terms of revenue generation, it was, let's say, 1,000 cedis. Now, when we say there was additional in year 2, using 20 people, we got 10% growth rate. It means that 10% plus I don't know, so if you understand, so 10% of 1,000 plus 1,000, it will be what? 1,100 meboa. Now, year 3, it will be 10% of the previous one. Then you add it, it will be 1,000. So this time around, it will be 1,000. More good in mathematics now. It will be 1,200 and something and some decimals. So 1,002 BB. Then this one too, it will be 10% of the previous one, which will be 1,200 plus 120 and thereabouts, which will be around 1,000, almost 1,400. Okay, approximately. So this is what we mean. Anytime we add more employees, the revenue of the company, although comparatively it is just 10% change, in terms of comparative analysis, it's an improvement upon the previous one. Is it clear now?
So you mean that it's always add up?
Exactly, it is adding up. Okay. But at this level, I was just using this to illustrate. At this level, you don't need these computations. No. When you get to level 300, and by that time, that is where we will go into all these estimations. So when you go to my YouTube channel, you will see an illustration of, for instance, using the regression approach to do HR demand forecasting or supply forecasting. At that point in time, the natural say you are ready for it. But at level 100, no one will ask you to demonstrate some of these things. Try and understand the logic and reasoning behind them. Okay. All right. Now let's go on to so we are still on the quantitative approaches. The next one is ratio analysis. The ratio analysis. So the ratio analysis, what is ratio and proportion? Ratio and proportion is that same analogy that we extend or we elevate when we say we are using the ratio analysis to estimate the need for human resources in terms of their quality and quantity. So the ratio analysis essentially tries to estimate the future human resource demand based on the ratio between causal factors and the number of employees that we will need. So the causal factors are the ones that I initially mentioned as the predictors of human resource planning, the predictors, such as the strategic objectives of the company, the outcome of environmental scan, whether you intend to introduce some sort of technology or innovation, the financial position of the company, and so on and so forth. All those things can be construed as factors. So you strike a ratio between those factors and the number of employees that you will need. And just as trend analysis, it also relies on the information that will be supplied by the company, because if the company does not supply information on all these index or factors and answer predictors, then it will be very difficult for you to also assign numerical quantifications to them. So some of them include, it could be the number of units that was produced in the past and which you are comparing to the number of units that you are going to produce in the future. In Abia, we use 10 people to clear 1 piece of land. Now we are going to clear 2 pieces of land. How many people will we need? Then you do the ratio and proportion. If 10 people is equal to 1, then X will be equal to 2 lands. Then you do the ratio and proportion. It could also be, so it depends on the index you are using to do the computation. If the index is about revenue per employee, then the calculation will be that this year we use 100 workforce. So let me scribble something. This year we use 100 employees and we were able to generate a revenue of 100,000 cedis. Now, how many people will we need to generate a revenue target of 500 Ghana cedis as far as revenue target is concerned? Then you make it X. So they are kind of the one calculation, ratio and proportion. This time this, this time this. Then it becomes 500,000 times 100 is equal to 100 we know x. Then you cross through by 100,000. Cross through by 100,000. So you just cancel this one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then the remaining one is what? 500. Which means that you will need 500 workforce or employees in order to achieve a revenue target of what? 500,000 Ghana cedis. So that is essentially the ratio analysis. And let me see if I've left anything out. So ratio analysis is very similar to the trend analysis, but primarily the difference is that there is no required for significant historical data. So unlike the trend analysis where we have to go into our archives and pull all the information we stored on our employment situations across the years and use it as a trajectory to forge into the future. In ratio analysis, we only need the data that is available. So it means that we are considering the data that we have gathered within a given calendar year of operation. So maybe only this year. This year, how many people did we use to achieve a particular revenue target and also to achieve a certain production outcome? Then if we are able to make that connection, then in order to know the number of people we will need to achieve a given production or revenue target in future, we just do ratio and proportion and the computation will be straightforward. Any question on the ratio analysis? All right. Now, so both trend analysis and ratio analysis can be used in conducting demand forecasting and supply forecasting. Both ratio analysis and trend analysis can be used in conducting demand forecasting and supply forecasting. So before I even come here, let me add that there is also another technique that we call regression approach. Write it down. When you go read about it, you'll find it on my YouTube channel. Regression approach. Regression approach. So regression approach also try to use a mathematical model to estimate the relationship between a number of factors, which we call predictors, and the specific index you are interested in, whether it is the number of employees needed, and so on and so forth. So when you go to my channel, you'll find a regression approach over there. But for the purpose of maybe answering objective questions, it can come as one of the possible quantitative techniques of conducting HR forecasting. So regression approach is also one of the quantitative techniques. The difference between ratio and trend analysis. Unlike trend analysis, there is no requirement for significant historical data in ratio analysis. This one, I've mentioned it already. So again, while trend analysis link one business or operational index over time. So that is why I meant by it tries to trace it through a past into the present and to the future. It tries to get a trajectory. Ratio analysis allows for multiple causal factors to be used to predict demand for human resources. So multiple causal factors which may be presently available to us, not necessarily things that occurred in the past. Okay, and ratio analysis is also useful in benchmarking a company's efforts with industry standards to help identify areas of strengths and weaknesses. So this is particularly important if you are trying to compare and contrast how you are doing from that of your rivals, then ratio analysis may be a better way of doing it. So, for instance, if you pick the financial statement of your company and you compare it with that of your rivals, you'll be able to tell whether the revenue you are generating in comparison to the workforce you are using is making financial sense as compared to that of your rivals. So that is what the accountants will call accounting ratio. So there are several typologies. You can have return on investments, that is ROI, return on investments. Then you can also have ROCE, return on capital invested, and so on and so forth. So there are several strategies that you can, in terms of ratio analysis, you can use it to ascertain the financial position of your company in comparison with how your rivals are doing, and so on and so forth. Then we are now moving into the qualitative approaches of ascertaining demand forecast. I earlier on indicated that the qualitative approach relies more on the subjective expertise or experiences of the HR forecaster or the person doing the forecasting. So let's look at examples of the qualitative techniques. The first one we are going to consider is what we call the managerial judgments. As the name even implies, managerial judgments, which suffices to say that we are relying on the expertise and the subjective opinion or experience of the manager or managers in the company to project into the future the number of human resources we will need in terms of their quality and quantity. So if the manager makes mistakes in terms of using their subjective projections, then it means the company is doomed. So unlike the quantitative approach where it can give you precise, the precision of the forecast is known, in the qualitative approach, there is a lot of subjectivity. So there isn't much precision attached to the forecast that you'll be making. But you can leave it to chance because you are dealing with people that are very much knowledgeable and experienced in that community of practice. So the most typical method of forecasting used is managerial judgment, that is in terms of the qualitative one. And this simply requires managers to sit down, reflect, think about their future workloads, and decide how many people they need. So you as a manager of the department, you are expected to reflect about the number of people that you think you will need to achieve a given target that has been given to you based on your experience as a person of expertise of that department. And because it relies on the subjectivity of the manager, we say that it is unscientific and may be misleading. Because if you get a manager who is not in touch with happenings in his department, then the manager may be giving you misleading forecasts. Sometimes there are people who are supposedly supposed to be managers of their department or their units, but they are always loafing around and engaged in other activities, which does not actually, essentially they do not actually have a sense of what is happening under their umbrella. So if you get such people and you task them to make their judgment, then it means the department and the company may be due. So the forecasting might be done on a bottom-up basis with line managers submitting proposals for agreement by senior managers. So the line managers at the various departments may decide to present their proposition for consideration by the senior management. And the reverse is true. Senior management may also make their own proposition and present it to the heads of these departments for them to peruse and give feedback whether it sits well with their mandates and the objective that they intend to achieve, and so on and so forth. So that is essentially the managerial judgment. The second qualitative approach is the Delphi method. The Delphi method. So the Delphi method also relies on the subjective experience of a panel of experts using their judgment to make estimates of short-term future demands. Now, these experts use a variety of factors. So those are what I call the predictors to make judgments, including economic, demographic, technological, legal, social conditions outside the organization, as well as production, sales, turnover issues, experiences, educational level of the workforce. So essentially, the panel of experts are taking into consideration both factors of the environment, the business environment, which include the internal and external environments. And during this process, the experts are not permitted to engage in a direct face-to-face contact or communication. So, assuming we put together 10 experts to come out with their own forecast as far as the need for and the supply of human resources is concerned, these experts we expect them to work on their own. They are expected to work separately without coming into face-to-face. Now, this is an effort to prevent groupthink, and groupthink is the degree to which a suggestion from a member of a group influences other members to conform to this initial suggestion without challenging it or presenting an equally compelling suggestion for consideration. So we don't want to have a situation where when you put all these 10 experts in a room, they will be, the one person starts making his submission, then the rest of the experts buy into that person's idea, and they will not present what they were thinking through in their mind. Now, first, the experts must identify, they must be identified to participate in the task. Secondly, so I'm taking you through the stages. You have to identify the experts. Then each expert is asked to submit an HR demand forecast, including specifics of the source of information and assumptions that were used to make the estimations. And some of these assumptions include the factors that will be considered over here. Then thirdly, each submission is gathered by the HR planning group. So the HR department will also have to set up a committee that will receive the submissions from these experts. Then this committee will have to aggregate the results by putting all of them together. So all the submissions that will come from the experts will now have to be put together and then sent back to all the experts again. And when these are sent back, it will be the first time the experts will be juxtaposing their own submissions with what their colleague experts also submitted. And they will be given an opportunity to adjust their forecast based on the information provided in the summary. And these steps will be repeated until the experts' opinions converge. So you realize that everyone will come on board with an opinion. And when you put the opinions side by side, the heavier ones will remain standing and the lighter ones will start falling down. So each feedback loop provides an opportunity for experts to understand their position relative to others and the reactions of other experts to the summaries provided. One problem of the Delphi method is that it is also very much subjective in nature, and it may be quite difficult for those who prefer quantitative approach to fully commit to it. Because the quantitative one, we are all picking the data from one source and we are running the analysis, regression. We are using the software to do it. And the numbers that will be coming out as far as the results is concerned will be easily interpretable. But the qualitative one, you realize individual orientations and subjectivity will be playing cardinal role in terms of the forecast. So you may not also have the luxury of time to accommodate all these back and forths. And that is why it is quite uncomfortable for people that are more interested in quantitative approaches to ascertain some of these estimates. Now, the third approach to qualitatively conduct demand forecasting is what we call the nominal group technique. The nominal group technique. The nominal group technique also make use of multiple experts. But unlike the Delphi technique where the experts start by working separately, in nominal group technique, usually the experts, including line and departmental managers, are put together in a room face to face to discuss, argue, brainstorm, and independently formulate positions on organizational issues with the ultimate aim of securing an accurate assessment of a given situation. So it can be used to help forecast HR demand for an organization, or can also be used to solve other organizational issues. So unlike the Delphi method where you start by letting the experts work separately, here you let them work face to face, and they will have to discuss all that they are thinking through, their positions back and forth in a face-to-face manner. So it can sometimes get very much heated when people become entrenched or attached to their positions. And because of the subjectivity fueling each individual's positioning, that is why it can sometimes get a little bit heated in terms of the argumentation and the discussion. Any questions so far on demand forecasting? So I have explained what demand forecasting is. I have also explained some specific techniques that can be used to conduct demand forecasting, both under the quantitative and qualitative. For the quantitative, I indicated that you can use techniques such as ratio analysis, trend analysis, and regression approach, which I said you should read about. For the qualitative, I said you can use the managerial judgment technique. You can also use the Delphi approach and then the nominal group technique. We are now moving on to supply forecasting. So once again, supply forecasting measures the number of people that are likely to be available from within and outside the organization. The internal supply analysis covers the following areas. So, and one of the predictors now I mentioned earlier on, the number of people employed by occupation, skills, and potential. So that is the quantity and quality. Potential losses to existing resources through attrition, that is employee turnover. Whether some people are resigning and joining competing organizations, or whether people are also going on retirement in the near future, and so on and so forth. Potential changes to existing resources through internal promotions. So whether people have been promoted from their current position to, to a higher one, and that may require for their previously held positions to be occupied. Changes in organizational structure in terms of new methods of working, including flexible work options, effects of increases in productivity, and so on and so forth. So all these considerations are taken into account when we are conducting supply forecasting, just as we do same for demand forecasting. And the objective of identifying human future HR supply requirements is to determine the number of employees in each job and their knowledge, skills, abilities, and other characteristics. So we want to make sure that when we peruse the company and its workforce, we should be able to find the qualities and quantities of people and match it to the jobs that are available over there. So anytime there is a discrepancy in terms of quality and quantity, then we need to use some form of action plan to address it, maybe through training and development, through recruitment and selection, and so on and so forth. So estimating the internal supply considers that employees may move from their current job into others through promotion, lateral moves, terminations. It may also be through transfers, through retirements, and so on and so forth. Now, it could also be as a result of turnover, okay? So let's look at specific techniques that can be used to conduct trend analysis, HR supply forecasting. As I mentioned earlier on, just as we can use trend analysis for demand forecasting, we can also use trend analysis for supply forecasting. But over here, the predictor or the outcome we are trying to ascertain is the supply of human resources. I would say when we are doing demand forecasting, it will be the need for human resources, and I said the demand for human resources. So under supply forecasting, it will be supply or availability of human resources. That is the only change. Other than that, the content and everything is just like what I explained earlier on. Then another technique that we can also have is, so in addition to trend analysis, we can also have ratio analysis. So still on the quantitative techniques for supply forecasting, in addition to trend analysis, the second one is ratio analysis, which I've explained already. And the third one is regression analysis. So let's move on to the quantitative techniques of conducting supply forecasting. The first one is what we call skills or competency models. Skills or competency models. The basic tenets of skills or competency models is that there is the need for the HR forecaster to match the right skills or competencies needed for each job with the skills that are available within the organization. Essentially, we are matching square pegs with square holes, as well as round pegs with round holes. So these models try to characterize all the various job portfolios that are available in the organization and the competency or skills that one needs to be successful in performing those jobs. So that when you are forecasting into the future, you also think about the qualities and quantities you are currently using to make your predictions. So if, for instance, for the accounting department, currently, the competency model suggests that you need someone with a chartered ACCA certificate or a chartered CA person to be successful in doing it. And once you get a chartered person, just one person can handle such a department. And you are opening another branch. You intend to open another branch. It will mean that if you're using the competency model, you just go to the model and look at what you use for your current one and rely on it to embark on the recruitment and selection. So that is the competency model. We also have replacement charts, the use of replacement charts. A replacement chart is used to estimate vacancies in higher level jobs and identify how potential HR supply can fill these vacancies via internal movements from lower levels. So essentially, in replacement charts, the HR department creates a graphical representation of all the positions that are filled in the organization, particularly the higher ones. And on what we call succession analysis, they are able to match suitable or promising candidates that have what it takes to occupy such portfolios once they become vacant. So the replacement chart will essentially give you a graphical communication of who is in line to replace a given higher position once it becomes vacant. That is it. All right, any questions so far? Any questions so far? Any question? Hey, no question. Okay, if there are